Good afternoon. I'm Tom Steenberg. I'm the Dean of the Owen Graduate School of Management, and I'm here with Michelle Kennedy, who's the President, COO, and the alternate governor of the Nashville Predators. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
It's great
I
to have you.
coming back to campus.
Yeah, and have you part of our Distinguished Speaker Series.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your time at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I'm a double door. I'm like a quadruple door.
Quadruple?
Yeah. So I've gone to school here. I have two degrees, and then I audited Vanderbilt, and I worked at Vanderbilt. So I'm going to call myself a quad door. So my journey began as a kid in a small town in Kentucky that was a decently smart kid and a decent athlete. And so I put those two things together and landed at Vanderbilt on the basketball team. I played basketball here from 1988 to 1992. And I often say that my distinction, and it's a distinction, not a great one, but a distinction, I think I am probably the most anonymous player in Vanderbilt history. I think good luck finding stats, good luck finding, but I tell you, I had a great seat for 4 years, and I had plenty of time to contemplate the future while I watched my teammates play. But it was a great experience. I wouldn't have done it any other way. Very, very different than the normal student experience. We came in the first day we hit campus. We were preseason conditioning. We had some good success during those years, and so we played deep into the season. And then the season ended, and we were always like, what do you do now? And so we watched a lot of baseball in spring and sort of tried to figure out how to be normal students. But during the time I was at Vanderbilt, as I said, I had plenty of time to contemplate my future. And it occurred to me, even as a kid playing a sport at Vanderbilt, I was intrigued by the business. I thought it was a very, very interesting business. And so at that time, I decided that I wanted a profession. I wanted to be professionally involved in sports and entertainment. At the time, I didn't exactly know what that looked like. There was a woman named June Stewart, and her role was that she traveled with us when we played. And so I always thought, I think I want to be Miss Stu. And then years later, when I worked at the athletic department with Miss Stu, I was like, oh my gosh, I would never want Miss Stu's job. So, but what I discerned when I decided as an undergrad that I wanted to be in sports and entertainment is that I felt like I needed to go somewhere else to see good business practices and bad business practices, and then bring that back to that world. Because at the time, and still relatively speaking, Vanderbilt was a real small athletic department in the SEC. I felt like there was probably some bigger world experience out there that I should gain before I did it. So I ended up working at KPMG back when there were 6 of the big 6. Now there are 4. Worked at KPMG for 5 years, audited financial statements, and did exactly what I set out to do. I saw good business practices and I saw bad business practices. Among my clients at the time, Vanderbilt, good business practices, and so that was, it was absolutely instrumental in what came next in my career, that my experience at KPMG led me to that audit, because after about 4.5 years, I felt like, okay, I know enough that I can.
You've seen the world.
I've seen enough that I think I can take whatever I've learned into sports and entertainment. And at the time, I didn't know where. But right around the time that I started talking about that, and you probably know enough about big 4, big 6 accounting to know that you don't have to hide the fact that you're looking for a job, because they immediately begin to regard you as a future client.
Yeah.
And so they knew that I was interested in a job. I was starting to look. And so the gentleman who was the business manager in the athletic department at Vanderbilt decided to start his own company. His name was Luther McDaniel. And I knew Luther from auditing Vanderbilt. And so someone called me one day and they're like, Luther's leaving, that should be your job. And so my audit partner called, my college coach called, everybody's calling me, saying, you've got to get involved with this search. So I did. I applied for the job, and the thing that was presented to me as a little bit dicey, like people kind of wanted to hide it from me. They said, okay, this job reports to the athletic director, which you'd expect, but it also reports to the CFO of Vanderbilt. And they kind of tried to blow that part off. And that part,
read the fine print.
Yeah. And so that element of it came from some internal audit findings that weren't awesome. And so they're like, you know what? This athletic business officer is going to report to our highest financial official. We'll show them. I think that was sort of the spirit of it. And I will tell you that connectivity was, again, one of the most important parts of my career. It was awesome. Lauren Brisky, who is the person that I reported to, who was the CFO at Vanderbilt for a long time, and I, to this day, call her my professional mother. she was awesome to me. And that connectivity.
It turned out to be a great mentor.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, she is my professional mother. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even, I don't love the word mentor, so I don't use that a lot anyway, but she's just so much more than that to me. And so it was fantastic, and it gave me additional insight of sitting around her table of the people who ran the university, and so I felt a little bit like the kid that got invited to the adult table, because at this time I was 27 and I'm sitting at the table with all these people who are running Vanderbilt, and I'm the little kid from athletics who sits at the big kid table. But it was great. They accepted me with open arms. I had a lot of insight from that that I wouldn't have otherwise had, and I think it lended a lot of credibility to athletics that I was sitting there and I at least presented as a pretty sane, pretty good business person. And so it really, it not only helped me, but I think the whole dynamic of athletics and the university at that time. So, I worked in athletics for 7 years, and I often tell the story. The first day I walked into my office in McGugin Center, very clean desk, probably the cleanest my desk has been since, and any of my jobs since that time. And in the middle of it was a document. I was like, oh, wonder where that is. So I pick it up, and it's the contract for the Titans to play in the football stadium at Vanderbilt. It was when they were moving from Houston. They'd had a year in Memphis that did not go well. The season, their stadium wasn't going to be ready for another year, so they had to have a place to play for a year. So they had discussed doing it at Vanderbilt. And at this point, the agreement had been made, and I thought when I saw that contract, I'm like, oh, cool, this is the contract. So I start flipping through it. It's redlined, it's unsigned, and you can edit this too. I had another oh shit moment. I'm like, it's my job to finish that. And so that was the first day of my career in sports and entertainment, and it was also the first day in what I call my street law practice.
Yeah.
Because I felt like the reason that I ended up going back to Vanderbilt to law school was that during that time in athletics, I felt like I practiced street law because I was the person that people thought, oh, she's a decent business person. Let's take legal issues to her. And I was fascinated by them. They seemed very straightforward to me. My analytical mind just gravitated to that.
Yeah. I love how you've described a couple of moments in your career where it's like, oh wait, I'm responsible for that. Yeah. And it's kind of like how you learn when you're given a lot of responsibility when you're young. You're like, oh yeah, so this is what it's actually like.
People say to me all the time now. I was just speaking to a group last week actually, and and it was a group of young professionals, and somebody raised their hand and said, I've got this job opportunity, but I'm really intimidated by it. I don't know if I'm ready for it. And I said, you know what? If you take a job that you feel like you're absolutely ready for, you're going to be bored in a month. I've never taken a job that I felt like I was absolutely ready for. And so you're right. Those, oh my goodness moments are the ones that really are springboards for growth instead of anything else.
Yeah, if you don't have that feeling, you're not pushing yourself.
That's right.
Enough. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your path to the Predators? Like, how did you get there, and what was that experience like as you started to go through that?
So we've done undergrad now. I've worked at Vanderbilt. Now let's start with the third leg of the four-door stool. So when I was in athletics, as I said, I felt like I practiced street law. A lot of legal issues came my way. And so I was in athletics all told 7 years. And so around the 5 or 6 year mark, I started getting a lot of inbound from headhunters about AD jobs, athletic director jobs. And I just didn't feel, philosophically, I didn't feel like that was the right alignment for me, because when I was in the athletic department working at the time that I did, we had just this perfect puzzle of people who all thought of things a little bit differently. And so, that mind share created a really robust and diverse
so together
process.
You had it. Yeah.
My part of that puzzle was that I always looked at what the economics of the decision would be, what was going to be the impact on the bottom line. And I wasn't out to hurt student athletes. I had been a student athlete. I understand the benefit of it. I loved all that, but that's just how my mind works. And so when I started getting those calls, I thought, that's just not what I think I'm supposed to do next. And I started thinking, I just thought a lot about this, the legal stuff that was so fascinating to me. And I think it might have been, there was one day we were doing a really unpleasant mediation. It was we had terminated an employee and he had sued us and we were in mediation. And I was sitting in a room with John Callison, who was the Deputy General Counsel at Vanderbilt at the time, and a gentleman from Bassberry, and the opposing party was in the other room. And that day, I mean, mediations I would say now are awful. I hate them. But that day, I felt like I was at Disneyland. It was great. And I knew enough of the facts and I had enough of a reasonable mind that I thought through the issues, but I wasn't tainted as a lawyer. It didn't make me mad. And so afterwards, it settled very favorably. And John and the other gentleman from Bass said, Michelle, if you hadn't been in this room today, we would not have gotten this settled. You were the absolute star of this. And I'd already kind of started thinking a little bit about law school, and then I think that flattery probably got me to the point of really pushing over the top.
But you can feel the fit.
Yeah.
Like you can see what you could bring
just,
to the...
just how my mind worked. You know, it was very, very logical to me. And so, at this time, when I started having these thoughts, I was 32, 33 years old. I was a senior associate AD, senior woman administrator in an SEC athletic department. People thought I had a lottery job. I did have a lottery job. I had a great job. And so when I started talking to friends and family about wanting to step away from that to go to law school, I think they thought I'd lost my mind.
Yeah.
But to me, it was very clear that I wanted to put my background, I'm a CPA at this point. I've worked in business in a couple different settings. Now I'm fascinated by all the legal things that I'm getting involved in. So logical to me to put those things together and then land in professional sports and entertainment on the other side. Did I know where I was going to land? Do jobs like that really exist? No. I remember my best friend's husband, who is a lawyer, he graduated from Vanderbilt Law School, at the time told his mother, we were standing in their kitchen, I think it was like Thanksgiving, and Harriet turned to me and said, Brett thinks you're crazy and that jobs like that don't exist. I'm like, you know what, Harriet? He might be right. I don't know. But I just feel so drawn to do this that I have to. And so I did. And then my professional mother was sitting so I enrolled in law school. I'm 34 years old. My friends are becoming partners in law firms, and I'm sitting in corporations class. It was a little bit weird. And so one day, and Lauren, who was still the CFO, and I still did consulting work for her while I went to law school because I had to do something in life that was age appropriate, was sitting at a lunch beside the president of business operations for the Preds. And random lunchtime conversation, he says, we're about to look for our first in-house counsel. We've had just one owner, but now that we're selling to a group, we're going to need someone who's on premise and dealing with everything every day. And she said, I have the perfect person for you. He's like, what? And she said, the only issue is that she's in her second year of law school. And I often think that Ed Lang is the guy's name that was president of business operations, must have thought, really? Yeah. Someone whose experience in life is undergrad and 2 years of law school is going to be my first in-house counsel.
Maybe in 10 years.
Yeah. And so then she explained that I was a geriatric law student and that it was a little bit different than that. And so Ed and I met, and during my end of my second year and all of my third year of law school, I went down to the Preds a couple days a week. So I was a law student. I was doing consulting work for Vanderbilt. The Preds leased me back from Vanderbilt to go down there 2 days a week to do legal work for them. So we checked each other out in that way. And when I graduated, they hired me as their first in-house counsel. And that's 15 years ago. And so after that, I was there for about 3 years, and they figured out what I call my double professional disability. I'm both an accountant and a lawyer. So if you have a bad day, imagine being in my head. And I became CFO and general counsel. Then a few years later, as the business began to grow or continued to grow, being both of those was a heavy lift. And so I hired someone to be the general counsel, someone to be the CFO, and then I became COO. Did that for a few years, and then this summer added president and alternate governor.
Yeah.
So 15 years, there you go. That's
lots of
path.
change, lots of growth through the years. So could you describe what a typical day is like for you as president and alternate governor? Like what does it look like day to day?
The thing is, no 2 days look the same, and that's what I love the most about it. I have a little bit of professional ADD. Like I'm not good at like doing one thing all day, every day. I mean, I can get very detailed, and as you might imagine, by being an accountant and a lawyer.
Yeah.
But every day's different. A lot of times it's things like this. A lot of times it's engaging with our revenue side to talk about plans for growing revenue. A lot of times it's a lawsuit. A lot of times it's just spending time with individuals on our staff, because I acknowledge that much more of my career is back there than up there. And so now my focus is on creating people who will take care of what we've built. Because 15 years ago, the Preds were not what they are now. I mean, some of the stuff that we went through in the early years, we've had all kinds of strife. And so when I look back now, I think, wow, it's a good thing you were young when you started, because I wouldn't go back every day right now if that's how my life looked. The first few years I spent in bankruptcy court. The only good news of that, it was in Northern California, so I would pop up to wine country pretty often.
Yeah.
But there were just a lot of really tough things. And so, we have worked really, really hard to create a really healthy, thriving enterprise. And so, as I don't have one foot out the door, but I want to prepare that next round of leaders to take care of the community asset that we've built.
Yeah, and I like how you've described kind of like some of the joy of your job is to do a little bit different thing every day, and then as you transition to sort of set this up for the next person. Yeah. So it's like it's in good standing, and you've created a team, and you've created an organization that's really, really thriving.
Yeah, well, I love that. I'm proud of it. One of the things that I think anyone that is, on our executive staff would tell you that they're most proud of is there is a special, special bond between this community and this organization. And as I think about why that is, I mean, number one, I think we started with our second GM, Barry Trotz, this is his first year as our second GM, was our first coach. And he had such a heart for philanthropy and for the community. I think he really got things going. But then if you think about 2007, when Craig Leopold was selling the team, there was a guy from Canada who had a purchase agreement signed.
Yeah.
And so it was, the moving vans were backed up. Hypothetically, I mean, not literally, but so the community was like, no, we are not going to let this happen. And so it was a band of the community citizens who rose up and bought enough tickets to keep us here. And so I think that is not ever forgotten. There's that part of why we're here that makes our connectivity to the community so important and so special to us. And so when this community hurts, we want to help. I think about during the pandemic, we gave away $2.5–3 million worth of goods and services and cash to the community that was in need. Doesn't mean that we're sitting around hoping for another global pandemic, but we always want to be there when the community is in need, because it was there when it was eminently possible that we were headed north forever.
Yeah, it speaks to the bond.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about trends that you see going forward in professional sports? You could talk about hockey or professional sports, or even how, like what created that bond, maybe in Nashville. There's such a thriving entertainment community here. It's one of the things that I love about being in Nashville, and maybe that's part of what the story is. But I'm curious how you see things moving ahead.
Yeah.
And
I think a few things I think will be really, really transformative, or have already been. Technology has been hugely transformative in hockey. The combination of technology and the legalization of gambling in a lot of states has been a big, big, big deal. Because now players wear things in their jerseys and you can track everything they're doing. I mean, you could sit,
it's remarkable. It's
a
remarkable.
data geek can sit in our building and just monitor stats on the Fang Vision all day long. And so that, of course, presents opportunities for monetizing it, because now I can bet not only on the score of the game, but does Roman Josi spend 25 minutes on the ice tonight? Who scores the first goal? Who's plus minus is this or that? So that opens a whole new area of revenue and opportunity for us. I think that when I think about Nashville and the evolution of hockey, and you said that it's just watching the community bond and all those things. There are two things that I think make that so. One is what we just talked about, which is that the ticket drive. Actually, three things. The second is we hosted the All-Star game here in 2016. And then once we got it, we weren't the passive, oh, thank you so much. We wanted it to be uniquely ours.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be so cool. So we lobbied with the league, got them to agree to let it be a 3-on-3 contest instead of the traditional. That ultimately evolved into now 3-on-3 overtime, which we have. So that was different. We had, Broadway was shut down. We had bands in the park. It was the coming out party for Nashville as a hockey city.
Yeah.
To this day, when we go to league meetings, people still talk about how special that was. It was so fun. It was the best few days. And incidentally, we talked about this just last week because, last week we had Snowmageddon. Can't go anywhere in this town if there's some snow.
I know.
that week. So the All-Star game is coming up. It's always early February. So when we were preparing for it, the weekend before the All-Star game, we had a weather event that was a lot like the one we had last week.
Oh, is that right?
And we were like, oh my gosh, all that we've gone through, all that we have done to make this happen is ruined. And then in true Nashville fashion, instead of what we're getting this week, what we got then was a bright, sunny, spring-like week the next week, and it was beautiful. It was the
skies opened up.
Yeah, and 70 degrees. People are out on Broadway in shorts. It was unbelievable. So that was 2016, and I think, that's when people are like, wow, what a great city. What a great experience. And so that was the second. The first was the relocation, stopped relocation. That was the second. The third was when we went to the Stanley Cup final in 2017. And, you take the passion that we felt in 2016 from hockey fans all over the world being here, and you infuse just Predators energy into it. There are still things that run in a loop on TVs in our building that show Broadway just completely wall-to-wall full of people wearing gold, sitting out in the streets watching the games because everybody wanted to be a part of it. It was a really, really, really cool experience. And I think that those two things happening in such close succession, we could have had the All-Star game and then nothing to sort of cement that feeling.
Yeah.
But that Stanley Cup final run was absolutely tremendous. I still get chills when I talk about it. It was a really, really special time. And so I think that creates some of the fandom, like the intense fandom that we have now. And it's just, there's just no, and it'd be silly if I didn't mention just being in the city does so much for sports teams. Everybody wants to come to Nashville. It's everyone's desired destination. And that has been terrific. We're the it city for everything, and it just raises the specter of hockey.
So we're close to the end, and I want to really thank you for being with us.
Sure.
We often close these speaker series with just a word of wisdom or some advice that you have from your career for people aspiring in theirs. Do you have anything that you'd share with us on that?
Yeah, there are a few things that always come to mind for me with things. I think, we work in sports and entertainment. We often say that we sell hot dogs and hockey tickets for a living, so don't take yourselves too seriously. But I think, there's always a place for laughter. I think as you climb the ladder, so to speak, take as much more responsibility than you take credit. Don't try to be anything you're not. What I want people to know about me is that I'm always going to think of myself as a kid from a small town in Kentucky that got some good breaks, and I'm sitting in a chair that a lot of people would like to be in, but I don't want anyone to think that they can't be in that same chair. So, and then, it's just work hard and because I'm a woman in a non-traditional role, I suppose, I don't like that characterization, but I do like to say to people, don't let that psych you out. I've never felt held back by being a woman. And I understand people have, and I am not trying to dispute that narrative is out there, but it's not my narrative. It's not what I've experienced at all. I've always been regarded as I regard myself, which is as a diligent professional. And again, Vanderbilt's been a big part of my story. It's been a big part of meeting people and getting opportunities. But no one out there should let themselves believe that being a woman is going to keep you from doing anything you want to do.
Thank you so much for being with us,
Of course.
Michelle. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.